Hi everyone, I'm Cloudjumper, and this is my breakdown of my track Dark Days Will Pass, which started out as the entry for the beat battle of Bad Snack's Discord server, and this was beat battle number 11, the Little Boy Aaron edition. So the samples came from Little Boy Aaron. Let's get into it. Okay, so before any further explanation, I'll just play you the track.
Lost all direction, can't tell which way is in, which out. There's 100,000 questions, fighting for just one ray of light. Can't remember who I am, what is this darkness in my mind? There isn't words that do it justice, what it feels like in this place. But I've heard others talk about it in a million different ways. And in this paradoxic, toxic trap of being frozen in confusion, it's this profound but simple question that guides me back to resolution. Can you feel? Can you feel? Can you feel? Can you feel? Darkness before in my life, days that suck and seem cursed because nothing goes right, and you just hold on tight and you hope for a smile because alone you just don't know how to get back to the light. One of those days where I feel trapped in my mind and all I can think of is escape to leave the shadows behind. But I can't run from my shadow, I can't afford to let go, so the only thing that is left to me is open my eyes and start to breathe. Can you feel? Can you feel? Can you feel?
Yeah, so that's the track. Let me give you a tiny bit of background for this piece, and also for those of you who don't know how the beat battles on Bad Snack's server work. First of all, I really recommend you check them out. Bad Snack server is my favorite place in the internet right now. I've never found such a supportive, positive, creative community. I know that's subjective, obviously, but for me, it's the best place. So the way in which these battles work is basically we get samples from the previous winner, and in this case that was Little Boy Aaron, and he gave us some really great samples, and then we get to make a beat, or in this case I guess it doesn't need to be a beat, it could also be a song, out of only those samples. In this battle in particular we were allowed to use 3 external instruments, although that varies a little bit. Sometimes it's just one, sometimes it's none, etc. So that's the basic idea. In my case, this is also a special track for me because it's the first time ever that I put anything out there where I am singing. I'm not a singer. I'm not trained as a singer. This was like a really scary thing for me to do, but I also really wanted to do it, and I'm quite happy with how it came out. And basically how that happened is I found this chord progression that we're going to look into in a second, and that reminded me so much of Radiohead, which I'm a huge fan of, that I wanted to do something kind of in that vein, and then, you know, it just kind of developed from there, and I was like, well, I'm eventually going to have to sing somewhere on something, so I might as well just get started so I can fail my way forward with this. And I think it worked out. So yeah, let's get into the different parts. Hi everybody, Editor Merlin from the future here. I just wanted to hop in here real quick and let you know that this track is actually in fact going to be released as a single in July this year. Depending on when you're watching this video, this might have already happened. But if you're watching this video right when it's coming out, then I have also just launched a remix competition that I wanted to tell you about around this track. So if you head over to my Discord, which the link is in the description below, or also on my Instagram or everywhere else, you can find all the details there. There will be winners, there's prizes. The winners of the competition will be in the release as well. Yeah, it'd be cool if you wanted to jump in and check it out and bring some fire remixes. I would really like to hear what you all like make of this track, as much as I personally, of course, love my single. I would really like to hear in which direction you want to take it, and I hope I see you all there. And now we're going to go back to the original video. Thank you so much for letting me jump in here. Bye! So let's start out with the drums. They're pretty minimal, like everything in this track. This actually somehow turned out to be this kind of track that I don't normally think I write very much. There's actually very little going on. It's kind of a super minimalistic thing, and yeah, that was cool. That was cool to do that. So yeah, what's going on with the drums is like really, really simple. I quickly show you the MIDI pattern, and then there's just some small alterations there that are looping. And yeah, all I did is I took some of the samples provided, chopped them up, threw them into a drum rack, and I'll play them for you in a second. You can see here there's a little bit of swing on these things, and that's what's giving it that feeling, I guess, that sort of swung or kind of drunken feeling. Yeah, and then what's on here is basically just the drum rack with all the different samples. And then I have a decapitator on here, pretty much just the preset. I didn't do very much. I think I maybe fiddled with a couple of knobs a little bit, but nothing major. It's mainly just this preset. Then we've got a drum bus on here with the punchy drive preset. Same story. I might have like tweaked a couple of things, adjusted the dry wet, but nothing like crazy going on. Yeah, then we've got a fab filter compressor here on the thick preset, just doing, well, what compressors do best, compressing the signal. Then I decided to put a little bit of Valhalla plate on here, which, you know, as you can see, it's like, it's just 10%. But let me show you what it does, because I feel like that is really what's giving the drums a little bit the character. Let me just solo them. This is without the reverb. And this is with. And so yeah, I feel like that really brings it together, especially if you listen to it in context. So originally I thought for a moment if I would maybe keep the super dry sound, because I also liked that, but in the end I decided to go with this one. Yeah, then have a little bit of Pro Q on there, but that's only cutting the low off below 55 Hertz. There's nothing else going on there. And then let's go over here. There's a little bit of filter, but that's just later on where there's some filter automation. Let me just show you over here. At this build up towards the chorus. Yeah, utility isn't really doing anything on this track. I just kind of throw that on everything usually, because it most times comes in handy. And then there's the neutron later on, which is basically just how I mixed this down. We've got a little bit of drum sculptor, which is quite nice on these drums. And then we've got like a very light dynamic EQ going on a little bit here, kind of rolling off the low a little more. Tiny bit of excitement. The compressors I'm not even utilizing, and that's pretty much it. That's how the drums work on this track. Okay, next let's have a look at the chords, which are kind of like how this whole track started, and also yeah, what's kind of the the meat and potatoes of this whole piece. And they're just playing the same chord progression over and over, which normally isn't something I would recommend to do, but in this case I think it kind of works. And yeah, how this happened is the synth is basically just this tiny wave form, like you can see over here. I chopped out of this really long sample. I didn't even crop that now that I look at it. And I think it's because these are slightly out of phase, or that's kind of what gives it this sort of gritty, nice sound that I started out with. So let me take off all the processing here and show you what this sounded like originally when I started writing with it. So let's just solo this here and let's see if I did anything. So yeah, okay, I pitched it, so I tuned it basically. That's all that's happening here. I adjusted the velocity a little bit to my liking. There's a very soft filter going on here, but yeah, nothing crazy or like altering. I think I did change the envelope here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. And yeah, the way it sounds just like this is like this. And yeah, that gave me instant goosebumps, so I had to go with this. And yeah, then we just have a little decapitator on here that is kind of fattening it up a little bit. Right, so we get these cool overtones from that, which makes the whole thing a little fuller, a little broader. Gives it some high frequency content, basically. I guess fattening up isn't quite the right terminology here because it's adding high frequency content and mids. So yeah, and then we've got a Pro Q here that's just doing the same again. There's a little bit of dynamic roll-off here that is just for the vocals. So this is dynamically, basically sidechained to the vocals. And then otherwise we just have a below 35 hertz cut to get sort of the mud and noise out of the stuff. Yeah, and then utility is just widening it a little bit and panning it. So right now you can see it's very left. And then with the utility, basically bringing it to center and then widening it. And then we have a tiny little bit of Valhalla Supermassive on here. And as you can see, this is actually doing nothing. This is just here in the end where it comes on, where we have this nice drift off. And then you can hear the Valhalla Supermassive coming in. Yeah, and as you can see, I'm automating a little bit of the EQ here. I'm also automating a little bit of the decapitator to get this kind of build here in the end. So this is what the automation looks like. Yeah, and that's kind of like what defines the whole track. But I was sort of feeling really lucky that I found this, and then playing with it, finding the chords and such. Like, yeah, it was a stroke of luck. Super cool when that happens, and that's the chords. Okay, so for the vocals, yeah, I mean, it's my voice. I used this microphone here, which is it's a 603S from MXL. That's a small condenser microphone, and this is pretty much my microphone for everything at the moment, although I'm thinking about expanding my collection a little bit. Let me unfreeze these tracks real quick so that I can actually show you what's going on there. I did actually do some vocal processing before this. So this is the first vocal bounce. There's a little bit of pitch correction and stuff going on because, like I said, I'm not actually a singer. I don't sound this good normally if you put me on anything. So yeah, there's a little bit of black magic going on, and then I bounced that out. And then what I did afterwards with this is basically just some EQing, very light, taking mud out, boosting a high shelf a little bit. It's pretty much like that for all of these. Here it looks a little bit slightly different, and because all the vocal performances are slightly different, that made sense to me, so that's why I did it like that. And here is the one for the part where I'm kind of rapping, and this is more what a vocal EQ for me normally looks like a little bit. Yeah, that's basically all we have here. And then there's a little bit of compression going on the rapped part. On the first verse we have a neutron. That's also, again, not doing much. There's a little bit of sculptor, a little bit of EQ and compression, and a tiny amount of distortion, which is why the voice sounds the way it sounds there. Yeah, so let me, to my embarrassment, play you even just what it sounds like without the EQ. One of the reasons I do this very sort of aggressive scoop on the low end is because my voice tends to be really bassy and full of low frequency content. So here is what that would sound like normally.
My heart is heavy and my mind is full of clouds.
And so this is with the EQ.
My heart is heavy and my mind is full of clouds.
And then this is with the neutron.
My heart is heavy and my mind is full of clouds.
So as you can hear, it's lightening up my voice. It's taking some of the weight out, which I think otherwise it wouldn't really work on this kind of track. And I don't know how like Tom Yorker or singers who can do this sort of light, breathy kind of performance do it. Maybe I'll learn that eventually. This really was super fun, so I think I will do more vocals in the future, but I have a lot to learn in that area. So yeah, and then we've got the chorus vocals here, where I'll also show you, again, keep in mind this is already processed, and I don't want to load up the other save part for this. It's mostly just processed through a little bit of RX cleanup stuff like the plosive and de-essing and so on, and then I just plooped Nectar onto it for a little bit of pitch correction and EQ, sibilance, stuff like that. So nothing too crazy really going on here, and yeah, without this processing it sounds like this.
Can you feel?
And then with the EQ.
Can you feel?
And then with the neutron.
Can you feel?
So as you can hear, there isn't a ton of difference in here. Yeah, and also you might have heard that I'm leaving a lot of like smacks and breaths and stuff in that I would normally in a vocal recording you would take those out. And I thought that in this case this really adds to the intimate vibe that this track has. On one of her feedback streams, Snack said it felt like I'm in the room when you're listening to it, which she was more articulate in saying what I wanted this to sound like, but that is what I wanted it to sound like. And that's why I left a lot of that stuff in, because I think it feels a little more real when you have these elements in the vocal recording, even though, technically by the book you would take those out in most productions. So yeah, that's pretty much on the vocal. As you can see, there's nothing here on the summing bus. It's just for the ability to have this side-chained over to the chords altogether. And that's the vocals on this. So the bass on this track is really unspectacular. There isn't a whole lot going on. It's a contact library. This is the one external instrument that I used outside of my voice. And it's the Rickenbacker bass from Scarby. It's one of my favorite bass libraries of all time. I pretty much use this on, like, I don't know, at least 60% of my tracks. And yeah, it's just in a preset of the call that I adjusted like very slightly sound-wise. And it's just making these little bassy plucks almost. And then there's another. So I really enjoy the super like rich sound that brings in and the tape sound that it has baked in. So all that's on there. Otherwise, it's a little bit of bass guitar compression from Pro C2, and then the utility, which just has a little bit of mono here, and then kind of very, very lightly boosts the plucky part into the sides a little bit, makes it just a little bit wider. Yeah, and then that's pretty much almost all the track already. The last thing we have to look at is this sort of chorus lead here that I made, and that does a couple of things. So what that is a very heavily processed part of that sample, where I pretty much did the same thing as I did with the chords, just with a different sample and a different part of the waveform. So let me just quickly turn all this stuff off to let you know what's going on here. Right, so okay, so in the beginning it's just playing the simple melody, and it sounds like this. And there's a lot of automation going on here. Again, I altered the filter, the envelope here, and I tuned that. Yeah, and then basically there's so much stuff automated, and you will hear that in a second. There's a lot of movement, and that's the whole idea of why this element came into existence. So first we have a little alter boy on it, which basically does this. A little bit of formant shifting. And then we have primal tap. And then we have a devil log on it, which I really like the distortion this adds. And because that wasn't enough yet, I threw a decapitator on it as well. And then over here is an auto filter where you will hear this is like where a lot of the automation comes from. Right, and then there is a Pro Q at the end, which is just cutting out the low end once again. Always good to keep your low end in check, especially in a super sparse minimalistic track like this. And then a utility, which is making this whole thing a little bit louder and also widening it. And so the whole thing that this plays makes a lot more sense when you hear it in context, but on its own it sounds like this.
Can you feel? Can you feel? Can you feel? Just tell me, can you feel, yo? Can you feel?
And then it goes into chords. And so as you can see, it's kind of doubling, or it's pretty much doubling the chords that are the main chords up here. But what I always find interesting is how sounds that are sort of broken and terrible like this can add something really well when they're just a layer. So in context, that's this part. Hear it together, just these two layers of the chords and the sort of additional layer. I feel like that's where this sort of layering technique really shines. Obviously, this is not super sophisticated or anything. Everybody can do this, but the point is that you have to do it. So I don't know, what am I saying? This is my advice to you. Layer your sounds, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, and that's pretty much the breakdown of this track. And I hope you enjoyed watching this. Again, there's not a lot to this in this case. I'm just really happy with how the track turned out. And I hope you like it. I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions, always feel free to hit me up, leave me a comment, write me on Instagram, or write me on the Discord server. You could also join my Discord server if you want to. Yeah, links are all in the description. I also leave a link for Bad Snacks server there because, again, like I said, best community on the internet, if you ask me. Take care, have a wonderful evening or day or whatever it is for you, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye.
My heart is heavy.